We've talked a little bit about, Scotland and the Church, Church of England, whatever you want to call it. Even from my days, Church of Ireland.
Yeah.
It can be very, very dark. Darren of We Are Messengers will give you a whole hour-long rundown on just how difficult it is. I just wanted to get your perspective, because a lot of us in the Southeast will look at church as, there's one on every corner. I can kind of pick and choose. It's like choosing a nail salon or a hair salon.
I think it's like anything. I think that the good news is it is dark. It is dark, and there are major concerns theologically in terms of just the number of Christians seems to be becoming less and less. But the good news is there's always a remnant. God always has people. There's always a remnant of people who are following Jesus and who are trying to live out the Bible. And so I like to look at it that way and say, do you know what, there's some people who look at the Church of Scotland, for example, or the Church of England, and say, well, theologically there's been compromise. I'm giving up on that. I'm walking away from it. And there's a lot of people who have walked away. And, everyone's entitled to their convictions, but there's a lot of people who have stayed and who are fighting, because the national church, Scotland used to be known as the land of the book. I mean, go back to the Reformation, go back to the 16th century, talk about John Knox and some of these reformers that came, and Scotland was a place that sent missionaries all over the world.
Right.
But now we need missionaries to come to our land. And so I'm kind of out here in America with a bit of a heavy heart, there's a strong sense that God's called me here, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But the thing is, God has called me to be here. And so I'm here for as long as he has me, but I do have a heart to go back and to bring the gospel to bear on my homeland and my home nation, for sure.
That's interesting. Because I didn't know who I was when I was, quote unquote, ministering in Ireland. I was a lost Christian kid that was searching for my traction. And then when I went back to Scotland a couple of years ago, I ended up in a church in Stirling, a lot of big battles you see in Braveheart there. And I went into this Church of England in Stirling, Scotland, and they were singing songs that I had sung 20 years before in Ireland, same songs. And the clientele, so to speak, was getting in their 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
I saw maybe 2 people under the age of 20 in the whole church. And it broke my heart to the point that when I came back to do a radio show, I almost felt like, am I just going back to my I want to stay there and pour out anything you've done in me.
Yes.
I feel like I want to go do that. It didn't make financial sense, and I didn't do it.
One of the mottos that came out of the Reformation that I feel has perhaps been neglected is that to keep on reforming. We reform and we keep on reforming, because when religion becomes religion, it stagnates, and when it becomes disconnected from the generations that are currently living, we need to preach the gospel to that generation. And sometimes, we can be a bit guilty of tradition, and so that it doesn't appeal to a lot of people, and so I think that's why certain churches are not seeing growth the way that perhaps other sections of the church are, charismatic churches or different denominations that have seen a little bit of growth compared to some of the more traditional denominations that I've observed. But so that's a really good point. How do we reach this generation and not just have the same little huddle of people getting older together? You know?
Yeah. Gosh, we could talk all day about that, but let's move on to new music. Burdens, or as you'd say,
Burdens.
This will be on the EP that comes out next week from Jamie Kimmett. Can you just give us DNA, heart behind Burdens?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is where Jesus just talks about those who are weary from life, or just weary, and says, "Come to me, all who are heavy with burdens, and I will give you rest." And one of the things that grabs me about that is just that Jesus says, "Come to me," and we come to Jesus, we become Christians, and then we forget to stay with him. We go on living life, but it's as Christians. We need to hear that as well. I need to come and find rest and to rest in Christ every single day. Otherwise, it's not long before I become weary and broken down by life. But so that's one sense of it. So I would want to sing that to the church and to people who are just weary from the Christian life, for sure. But then there's another sense in which, if you've never known Christ, if you need to find out about what Christianity is, then that's the place that you find your salvation. That's the place that you find freedom from sin, that you find healing, you find deliverance, and joy and hope. Certainly that's what's happened for me. And so there's kind of I would hope that it's a twofold message for people there.